do you get someone to begin to foster a sense of self who really has no sense of self? How do you put something there when there's no there, right? How do you get this started? And that really becomes the essence of treatment. How do we begin to get that started? Let me tell you, all of us have heard about or practiced or been involved with exposure therapies for trauma, like EMDR, there's somatic sensing, there are other forms of therapy that have become very popular in recent years. Most of them involve, first of all, identifying an incident and then retelling of the incident. And while it's a gross generalization, it's about often reprocessing that incident, right? And so the incident is replayed over and over again until there is no longer that strong emotional attachment to the incident. Now, what is frustrating about this to me is that individuals who've been traumatized by shame are often put through this kind of treatment by their therapists. And it is because that's the only trauma treatment that we know. And we lump them all in that category, and yet they're really, it's not appropriate on several levels. First of all, it's not appropriate because there's usually not an identifiable event. I hope you got it from the first part of this presentation that it's like, it's not the hit, usually it's not the sexual abuse, it's the pattern of invalidation, which happens over years and persistently, and so you can't identify that particular point. They don't meet the criteria of PTSD where they're having flashbacks or they're reliving it. They're not intrusive memories. And so often what unskilled therapists will say is that you're in denial about that if they can't access it, and I don't believe that's necessarily the case. I think the difference that we're looking at, and it becomes incredibly relevant in treatment, is that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is an anxiety-based disorder. It is a disorder of the emotion of fear. Remember the 5 emotions, okay? Shame-based trauma is a disorder of shame, not fear. Shame becomes the primary. And so the treatment model must treat it that way. PTSD, there are some very effective ways for treating that and clearly needed in some clients. And sometimes it's combined with shame-based trauma, so you use traditional trauma methods for that. But when it comes to shame-based trauma, those methods typically don't work. And in fact, they do harm. And again, going back to the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference, it was really a great pleasure to hear Albert Bandura speak. And if any of you have been up on Albert's work of recent years, he's done a lot. You may remember, he's a psychologist that came up with self-efficacy. And it's one of the most rigorous findings in all of psychology. The fact that self-efficacy is the ability to control your own behavior and determine your own life, and how important that is. And one of the things that he's done recently that's kind of gone under the radar but is very significant is that a lot of the traditional trauma treatments actually hurt self-efficacy, coping self-efficacy, because having you replay over and over and over again the incidents reinforces that sense of being out of control and not able to control your life and not able to control what happens to you. And it hurts that ability to feel like you can make a difference in your life, your self-efficacy. And so one of the studies that he presented, which was interesting, is that those who use trauma treatments in combination with a style that supports self-efficacy are very effective. But the ones who use it and don't support self-efficacy often do a lot of damage. So in that context, what I want to tell you is that when we start looking at treating shame-based trauma, self-efficacy becomes huge. It becomes a primary goal. How can we reinforce the sense that you have control over your life, that you can cope, and that you have the ability to handle what comes your way no matter what that is?